Welcome back, friends, and this time I'm going to be talking about a brand new movie. That movie is the Golden Kamuy live-action remake. Now, I never talk about new movies, so you shouldn't take this for granted. This is a very big moment, very exciting for everyone involved. You should be very happy to see this. This is the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life. Anyway, Golden Kamuy is based on a popular manga and anime franchise, and of course, I'm doing the whole live-action anime thing, and I decided to watch this. I was very excited hearing about this coming out, and upon watching it, it's become my favourite movie of the year so far. Now, granted, I haven't seen that many new movies, so maybe that's not that high praise, but what I will say is that I was so enamored with this movie after I watched it, that since then, I've seen it like 6 times. It's really cool. And there's a really specific reason for this, I feel like. And so, this is going to be a relatively normal review near the end that's going to have some spoilers in it. But at the beginning, I more so want to talk about this one particular thing. And that thing, for lack of a better word, is atmosphere. And that's mostly what I'm going to be talking about in this video. That to me is the important selling point of this movie. So without further ado, here we go, onto atmosphere. Before I fill you in on the atmosphere, I want to explain to you the premise of Golden Kamuy, which follows a soldier known as Immortal Sugimoto, played by Kento Yamazaki, as you can see here. Kento fans love this one, I gotta say. He's good to go. Now, he has this inexplicable ability to survive. He can take a lot of damage, and he heals really quickly. Hence the nickname Immortal Sugimoto, a nickname he has embraced. Following the conflict, he decides to go to Hokkaido and pan for gold. He's looking to get rich, and ultimately ends up hearing a story about a hidden treasure, and teams up with a group of people who he kind of encounters over the series of the story, and seeks to find this gold. It's a pretty simple premise, certainly not one that's outwardly unique. It's been done before, right? It's kind of like an Indiana Jones or maybe a Magnificent Warriors, like the Michelle Yeoh movie, right? And generally speaking, it follows a lot of the similar kind of tropes, where they gather a team, they hear about the gold, and they plot to try and get it. And so you might have in your head this idea of what the atmosphere of the movie is going to be like. And let me just say, you're dead wrong. Unlike the comparable stories that exist, like Indiana Jones, this movie has an underlying tone to it that, to me, is uniquely unnerving. There's something really mystical and otherworldly about the way that a lot of this story is presented. And there are quite a few reasons that this could be, and it could just be an aesthetic choice, of course, but it is something that really elevates this movie. With a story like that, and ultimately with how it ends up being portrayed, this is a pretty solid 4-star action movie for the most part, action-adventure movie. But thanks to that presentation and thanks to that aestheticism, it ends up being elevated beyond its initial ideas and abilities. Quite frankly, it's mesmerising. One of the earliest instances of this really showcasing itself and cementing itself for me was in this early scene, and this is a light spoiler, so feel free to skip ahead and certainly feel free to look away when I show the images. I'll try and let you know when I do them. But it's early in the movie, it's super early, it's in the first like 20 minutes. There's a scene where he has an encounter with a bear, and he's already met his Ainu teammate Ashrippa, who helps him along with searching for the treasure. Now, when fighting this bear, they plan to lure it out at night time, and it's pitch black. The only light existing in the scene is the moonlight and their fire. Everything outside of the area where they are camped is pitch black. There's a darkness in the trees, this true black. Something that I feel like you don't often see, certainly in a lot of horror movies. Even Prey kind of doesn't do this if you've seen Prey. Prey is, of course, a great movie that features a lot of nighttime scenes. But when it's dark in the forest, you can see beyond the forest. This one creates the forest wall as this kind of imperceptible dark wall that you can't traverse. And so, of course, eventually the bear attacks, and Sugimoto is under a lot of pressure, and the fire gets kicked out. And it's too dark for a Shripper to be able to fire an arrow at him accurately. And so the moon is obscured by clouds, making it difficult to see. These clouds eventually disperse, and the area in which they're in is beset by this deep blue glow that fills this scene. Eventually, she's able to fire the arrow, and it hits the bear, which drives it off for a brief second as it disappears into the black, smog-like wall of light in the outside area of the forest. As this happens, it is implied that the moon starts going behind the clouds again, smaller clouds that it goes in and out of, and it flashes this blue light on and off, almost like an alarm system in a building. And it looks magnificent. And it makes what should be a simple sequence where our heroes encounter an animal otherworldly and mystical and unusual, especially with the presence of these darker areas and the contrast and the saturation and the light and the colors in this movie really elevate this. It looks fantastic. And that's just the first example of where this kind of comes through. It's really beautiful. And it creates this kind of unnerving sense of dread. Whereas the rest of the movie is essentially this classic, action comedy, light-hearted, with drama elements story about finding treasure. And so throughout the movie you're watching it, there's this vibe underneath where everything is not quite what it seems. It's unsettling and it has this kind of sense of dread to it. At least that's how I felt. I know not everyone is going to feel that way. And there's a few reasons why this could be. And in fact, one thing that we see a lot is during scenes where Sugimoto is under a lot of stress and under a lot of high risk, these scenes seem to be more prevalent. With a name like Immortal Sugimoto, there's this kind of vibe that his grasp between the differences of life and death are tenuous at best. And so every time he gets into these situations where he is in extreme peril, these scenes seem to heighten. Because in this moment, he's being attacked by a bear. And so the light flashing, the mystical sense almost makes it feel like he's entering this kind of afterlife plane where he has to exist in the spirit world almost. And that kind of runs true throughout the entirety of the show. Now, of course, the franchise is called Golden Kamuy. For those who don't know, Kamuy essentially means spirit. And throughout the movie, Asripa, the Ainu member of the team, is constantly mentioning these Kamui. She talks about Wen Kamui, she talks about Hawkeye Kamui, and these different spirits and how they affect stuff. Even in that scene with the bear, she talks about how eating flesh that has killed a human can corrupt your spirit, and that killing people also corrupts your spirit in general, and that it's a general bad thing to do, even if you're an animal, that humans are the lifeblood. I don't know if this is a specific Ainu belief or if this is just for the show or the movie or the anime or the manga or whatever, but it is a prevailing theme throughout the movie going forward. Another angle, of course, could be to follow the Ainu character Asripa, another main character, who is essentially the second lead in this movie. Now, the Ainu culture that they present in the movie seems steeped in mysticism and spiritualism. They talk constantly about spirits. They follow these deep traditions and these practices and these ways of doing things that really lead to the idea that there's a spiritual connection between them and the world around them. And so a lot of their scenes are also steeped in mysticism too. Equally, this is presented by the characters as well, who often seem out of the grasp of reality. Now, I'm sure this hasn't really applied to many people, as I mentioned earlier, but some of the people who I've spoken to about it, on reflection, could see where I'm coming from. And a lot of the people who I watched it with or who I've spoke to after watching it also felt this kind of otherworldly element bubble over to the surface. So I don't know if the anime or the manga is like this. I haven't read or watched. You'll have to tell me if it is, because I will check it out if so. But that kind of spiritualism bleeding into the narrative really elevates this movie. And these visual images that they keep putting on are so compelling that for me, I was thinking about a lot of them for a long time. And they really changed the outlook and vibe of the movie overall. And so I'm going to, again, light spoilers, again, don't look, you can skip ahead if you want to miss this until the next section. But here are a couple of my favourite shots in the movie, a couple of my favourite otherworldly moments. The first being when he's in the battlefield and the saturation is so high and his eyes are widened and the air is thick, makes it feel like he is in a different plane of existence. There's also the scene where Shirashi tries to slip through the bars of the prison cell and slides along the floor. There are these two characters, these twins who follow them around who, if you've ever played XCOM, remind me of the Thin Men. In XCOM they are these aliens who are disguised as FBI agents who wear glasses to hide their unnerving eyes. And their movements are so natural and they're in sync all of the time. They're really eerie, unnerving guys. There's also the scene where he's in the Ainu village and he sits in the darkness, covered entirely in shadow, as he contemplates the life of Asripa and her ability to help him, and his ability to put her in danger. And there's also this one shot during this other battle that he has with these soldiers that also involves a bear that really took a lot of us off guard when we watched it. This absolutely insane shot with this through this hole, this like little bear hole that is, I mean, that sticks with you, I think. Brilliant scene. And then there's also the scene in the prison. Pretty much this whole sequence is in the prison, from the general chattering his teeth and interrogating him, to Sugimoto's glassed over eyes as he is impaled, and even more so, the the brilliant shot of him sat down, surrounded by blood, as another character is dead next to him, is brilliant. And those are only a few. I haven't even talked about some of the later ones. They're really, really brilliant. This is a small editor's note, so sorry about the change in audio quality for this small brief section, but I just wanted to say that there are actually so many other fantastic shots in this. I kind of undersold it a little here. I named some of my favourites, but going through and collecting the clips, it's chock full. And even the shots that aren't eerie and mysterious and strange, they're still very beautiful. There's a lot of really, really stunning imagery in this, I think. That's all from Editing Brad. Back to the video. I think that is a compelling enough reason to watch this movie. It is beautiful. And I'm not just saying it's beautiful because of the atmosphere, but it is genuinely shot in a really beautiful way. Shigeki Kubo, the director, famously directs those high and low movies and the TV show, which of course you might have heard of, because they have 5 million characters, and that's not an under-exaggeration, let me tell you. There are so many characters in those movies to keep track of. Now, those movies only exist really to promote the coolness of a group of different boy bands, a group of different J-pop artists. And so, of course, Shigeki Kubo has taken his ability to make people look cool and create these aesthetically pleasing pictures and make these guys look really beautiful. And he's taken that and applied it to this unnerving sense of drama that this movie has. Frankly, it's beautiful even without the atmosphere. There are tons of great shots. It's aided by the fact that it is in this beautiful location. Hokkaido looks so beautiful with the snow and the fog and these vast empty places with these beautiful forests and I mean, they must have built this set, but this beautiful little town set piece that they've made as well. It is a genuinely compelling and stunning movie to look at throughout, regardless of the atmosphere or not. And so I definitely recommend watching it just to kind of see the aestheticism on display. There are tons of shots and tons of moments that will stick with you, I hope, that they stuck with me. And while you might not see the atmosphere the way I did, there's a good chance that you might. And at worst, you're still getting a pretty fun action-adventure movie. And you can't really go wrong with that. I think even if you didn't get the atmosphere, even if you didn't think it was that beautiful or you didn't think that impacted you that much, you're still getting a fun movie. And you can't really complain about that. So I'll move on to my review now. Right now. So just for reference, this review section will include spoilers pretty much early on, but it's also going to be just a little short section. So, you know, if you don't watch it, that's fine. I'm not going to complain. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the story. Golden Kamuy is not without its problems, certainly, despite the fact that it is a really good movie and a movie that I think is a 5-star movie. And one of the biggest problems with it is some of its story elements. Granted, the story elements that are there are really good. I think that there's a lot of tension in some early scenes and some later scenes as well. This great moment where they have to escape prison, and I think that moment is super compelling throughout. Really brilliantly shot. It looks fantastic and the stakes are brilliant. That is some of the best scenes in the movie. I also think the early scenes where they fight the bear are really cool, as are the war scenes, And these kind of, the way this builds up the story and brings these characters together, the tension is really good. I also love the comedic scenes with Asripa and Sugimoto in the tent as they talk about different kinds of food. That's really cool. I also think this movie has a lot of inventive characters. Like a lot of anime and mangas, the characters are sometimes a little bit off the wall. And while some people might find that a bit silly, I think it doesn't feel that silly here. They still feel kind of natural. And when they do kind of go into the silly territory, it works for that atmosphere that I was talking about earlier. That's really awesome. And the bad characters especially really portray this. Like I mentioned earlier, those two twins are excellent. And the general character is really good as well. As is the big guy and the samurai who watches over him. And the other members of his gang are also really good. They're obviously not bad guys, but they also add a lot of likability to the cast so that you have people to root for. It's very successful. And that leads me into the performances, of course. This is one of Kento's most mature performances. I think he feels like he's got a lot of depth here, and he's got a really grounded performance. That scene in the jail cell that I mentioned earlier, he's fantastic in that scene. He really, really makes me believe. And the way they write his character is really cool, because he always seems kind of with it, kind of smart, like he's got his wits about him. There'll be plenty of situations where he'll be approached by people, and his natural instinct and the way it's performed by Kento really makes you believe that he is really wily and that he's really able to get himself out of these situations without having to resort to his obvious skills in battle. He has wits. He has manipulation. He's a good liar. These are all really interesting traits for him to have. And the final thing to talk about really is the action. The action, of course, is very good. It's another Yuji Shimomura joint, so you kind of know what you're getting. You're getting explosions, you're getting fast jumps, you're getting physics-defying movements, and you're getting a lot of good motion and good no-cut sequences that are really exciting. But there's not actually a lot of action in this movie, so please don't go into it expecting it to be a balls-to-the-walls, endless action epic. It's much more of a comedy action drama where you get, a lot of comedy and a lot of drama, and then you get action set pieces to tie it all together. There is action scattered throughout. There's little moments, like I was saying with the prison cell, or there's a small town sequence that's about 5 minutes long, that's quite fun. There are 2 action set pieces, of course, at the start when we see him in the war, and then another one near the end. And both of these are really good, but there's just not that much action. And so that kind of leads me on to the only real complaint that I have. As I mentioned, the story wasn't perfect. And the story isn't perfect for one reason. And this is a major spoiler. If you've been willing to put up with the spoilers up until this point, this is the biggest one. It's the ending is the problem. Of course, this is based on a manga. This is based on an anime. These are episodic in nature. They're designed to go on. And as a result, this movie really lacks finality. Now, I don't think that's a huge problem, especially if you know what you're getting yourself in for. And there's 2 big arcs in this that feel like they kind of end relatively conclusively. But by the end of the movie, you generally feel like they've made little progress. You generally feel like there's not really been a lot achieved, and that you kind of get shortchanged, it feels like. And it's kind of a long movie too. It's satisfying enough that it's not a huge issue. And of course, the idea is there's going to be more, so you don't really need to panic. And I will reassure you, you definitely don't need to panic because this movie was very successful in Japan. And of course, it's a long-running franchise, so the story's already been written. They're planning to release a TV show, is my understanding, first, which is coming out in October. I don't know when international audiences will get that. And it seems like after the TV show is finished, they'll be making a second movie. So that's the current plans from the studio behind it. And of course, the success has allowed them to do this without worry. So we don't have any reason to think that this story isn't getting at least more closure. It might not get finished because a lot of these stories don't, they go on forever. At the very least, we know it's ongoing. The other problem with the story is that there is a middle section that is a little slow. I don't think you will mind on the first watch. A few of my friends noticed it. I didn't really feel it until the second watch. And, that made me feel a little bit less positive towards it. But I also, because I had enjoyed it previously, I also felt like kind of a repeat viewing enjoyment of it as well. So it ended up evening out rather than improving, which ultimately made me think that outside of live action anime movies, it's only just a little bit behind, say, Kingdom 2 for me, which is another movie I think is brilliant and I gave 5 stars. So hopefully I've convinced you to check this out. I would definitely recommend it. I think it is beautiful. I think it is brilliant. And like I say, at worst you're getting an action adventure movie that's pretty good. So That's not really a big issue, is it? And thanks for watching. If you did, I can't wait for the next one. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the live-action movie if you've seen it, and let me know how you think it compares to the anime, and if you think the anime or the manga have just as good unnerving atmosphere to them. I hope they do, because that would be really cool. I'll catch you in the next one. You enjoy your day.